Congress is now investigating the death of Jeffrey Epstein. The House Judiciary Committee launched a bipartisan investigation after the convicted sex offender was found dead in his Manhattan jail cell over the weekend.
This comes as the FBI expands its own investigation into Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring. The 66-year-old is accused of sexually abusing dozens of underage girls. His alleged victims continue to demand justice. So for more on this, let us bring in CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman. So, Rikki, what are some of the new details that we're learning now?
Well, we certainly learned yesterday that his means of killing himself, assuming he did kill himself without help, was by hanging. And that what he did was, once he had left Suicide Watch and got into a cell by himself, all, by the way, against the rules.
Right.
That he, who is a 6-foot-tall man, managed to take a sheet, attach it to the top bunk, and then kneel down, and that's how he hung himself. The details also that have come out that I find, frankly, very disturbing was the condition of how he was monitored at the MCC, which is the Metropolitan Correctional Center, on the SHU, as we call it, the Special Housing Unit, where the most high-profile, the most notorious criminals or people facing possible prosecution are housed. El Chapo was on that floor. Paul Manafort is still on that floor. And in fact, if I were Paul Manafort right now, I would not be very comfortable, because you have guards, one of whom was really not a correctional officer at that point. Their excuses, they were very understaffed. They were working multiple overtimes. And so what that tells me is they were asleep. That's what it tells me.
So I'm trying to understand, I mean, could it be that Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys asked for him to be taken off Suicide Watch? And what would be the reason why a defense attorney would suggest to the corrections facility to remove a client who had attempted, reportedly, suicide in the past?
I don't want to be a conspiratorial theorist, but I can't help it in this situation. Jeffrey Epstein was one, and my conspiracy involves no one other than Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was one of the most manipulative people that has ever been on the planet, according to all of the investigation. This was someone who didn't only allegedly use women as play toys. He had an enterprise of sex trafficking of young girls. I mean, it's a full enterprise. He had an apartment building where they were brought, they were interviewed, they were observed, they were given apartments. They were then sent over in a methodical way to his mansion in the East 70s. This is someone who had multiple places where he could conduct his terrible sexual activity, which, as I call it, with children. So let's follow my logic. He sees himself for the first time ever in his life that he cannot buy himself out of this, that he is now in one of the worst places, the MCC in America. El Chapo, as you may recall, filed motion after motion to get out of the SHU because the conditions were so bad. So Jeffrey Epstein says, I'm going to end this. I'm going to end my life. He attempts suicide back in July. He is not successful. He is then put on a suicide watch, where it is very clear to him that he cannot commit suicide on a suicide watch because he has no means. The sheets are paper. He has no ties, no shoe ties. There is no way for him to commit suicide in a suicide cell, suicide prevention cell. So he becomes suddenly very lucid and very fine and has meetings with his lawyers. And he says, I don't want to stay in this cell anymore. I'm perfectly fine. And he could have convinced himself or his lawyers that that wasn't an attempted suicide, but was an attempted assault by his cellmate, who was the person who was a police officer from upstate who had allegedly committed 4 homicides and who had been taken away from him. He manages, perhaps, it's only a rumor, that he asked his lawyers to get him back into the cell block, and that he wants a cell by himself because he was afraid of this guy. Gets a cell by himself, has the ability to observe what the activities are of the prison guards, and in this process sees his lawyers on Friday night, shows them he's with them for 6 hours, shows them he's perfectly fine. They go off, they think everything is fine, and then he's dead. Now, that whole theory you could throw out the window with all the other theories. But Jeffrey Epstein, he didn't commit suicide because of someone who is in anguish. He committed suicide, assuming it was a suicide, on the basis that this was the easy way out. Now, that's one theory. There's a lot of other theories going on there. But these guards were not around every half an hour as they were supposed to be. So if his lawyers, in fact, did, which I do not know that they did, if they asked for him to be taken off of suicide watch, it was as his instruction.
You know, and we're going to wrap this up, but we're going to be here every day, Rikki, to talk about this.
Either I am or the old El Chapo gang.
Oh, yeah, the old El Chapo gang.
We are all back, but I will see you on Thursday.
But I do find it curious also that the Attorney General William Barr, while he says he wants a full investigation into this, he is already saying it's an apparent suicide, and the investigation is not complete yet because throughout the conversation we've been having, you've been sprinkling if he did commit suicide.
Well,
we don't know.
I can only say that. And in addition, before I leave you, I think the most important question here right now is victim recourse, and are the accomplices going to get prosecuted? And I bet my house they are, because Jeffrey Berman, who is the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, he says they're going after the accomplices, and William Barr says they're going after the accomplices. And by the way, one other thing, tomorrow, August 14th, Wednesday, this is the day the statute of limitations opens up in New York for 1 year, no matter what time you were abused at any point in your past if you were a child. Go file your cause of action.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that's good information to leave us with. Thank you, Rikki.